This is Central Texas Living with Ann Harder.
Hello, I'm Ann Harder. Welcome to Central Texas Living, the podcast. You know, there are people who've had to overcome the worst adversity, and I'm talking about victims of domestic abuse, domestic violence, sexual abuse, sex trafficking, things like that, substance abuse. I mean, hard things. I'd like you to meet Lolita Gilmore, my good friend Lolita. Her passion is helping these folks who are overcoming, and you founded the Teach Them to Love outreach ministry that's located in Killeen. And
Yes,
I mean, you're just a delightful person. You're a retired Army veteran,
Right.
21 years
Right.
service, but you have 2 master's degrees, social work and substance abuse counseling, working on a PhD. How's that coming?
Well, you know what? I changed and went to a doctoral because I wanted to go into seminary.
Okay.
So it's like everything that we've done with social services, psychology, and it's like God said, okay, what about me? And I was like, I want to do this. And I've been wanting to do it forever. And so I just shut down everything else. And now I'm working on my doctorate of ministry. So I'm in seminary right now.
Okay, and I didn't get to that part yet, but you are a minister. You are a minister as well of the Word of God. And I just want to share this first. It says, and this I found on your website, but she lives by the scripture which states, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. That's
Yes,
Philippians 4:13. And what a great scripture to live by. And let's talk about the folks that you help through your counseling services and teach them to love outreach.
Well, when we look at what we're doing right now, and I'm a little distracted here. Okay, so what we look at is just that the underserved and the disenfranchised populations that deal with domestic violence, substance abuse, child abuse, sex trafficking, and other family dynamics that we don't normally hear about. In our world, everything is perfect. We're living the American dream. But you have a population of individuals who are suffering, from some treacherous, tumultuous situations. And so that's the population that we're drawn to, because when we look at where we are now, we look at the crime rate.
Right.
We look at.
I know they're concerned in Killeen too,
a huge
especially
concern in Killeen
because there's been an uptick, and it's frightening.
And
if you're a parent with a kid in school, it's
exactly.
Yeah.
And so when you think about all of that, and what my passion is, is the why. Let's get to the why. Let's get an understanding. And oftentimes when we do assessments, we find out that there was childhood trauma. That childhood trauma comes in the form of child abuse, domestic violence, family violence, and we give everything all these different categories, but at the end of the day, it's family violence. And so when we get to that and we begin to talk with the individuals in school, and where we find is that this leads to the gateway of the child welfare system. And so you have the fussing and the fighting and the drinking and everything that's going on. What's happening to the babies along the way? They're going into the CPS system. And as they go into the CPS system, mom has to make a decision. Dad has to make a decision, because this is family violence. So now we have shelter services, which is where Teach Them to Love comes in. Because with this service that we have, the mother leaves because, hey, this is dangerous. And you have so many who try to stay in the situation.
right. Well, because the husband's the breadwinner, and they're economically they feel like they're tied to their problem.
Exactly. And so when we look at all of that, that's one of the reasons when we ask the question, and it's such an unfair question that we ask a lot of individuals, especially females. Well, why would you stay in a situation? Yeah. And like you just said, I'm staying with them. I'm not staying for me. And they think that I'm staying for the sake of my child or the sake of the children and their livelihood, because it's better to have them in the home where they have the 4-bedroom home, the nice house, and all of the fixings that come along with it. But they're being traumatized every day.
Yeah.
And so we're thinking, and I say we because it happens to everyone. And so, and what we look at, a mother would make the decision to stay in that situation rather than come into the shelter. And I had one mother that, at home, they had everything. But I come here and we have peace.
Right. How do you put a price tag on
How do you put a
peace?
price on that?
Right.
If we have peace.
Concerned, or walking on eggshells with that person who's, got their own issues. And I know part of what you do has to do with working with kids in breaking this cycle, because it's just a generational thing.
It is,
isn't it?
It is. It is. It's a generational piece. And it's because when we know better, and that's the old saying, when you know better, you do better. But that's not always the case. Because
You can say, I know I don't like living like this, but then the next thing you know, you're doing the same thing.
You're doing the same thing because learned behaviors.
Yeah.
I'm doing what I've been taught to do. You remember the old, it's an old folk tale where everybody would come in the house, and the grandmother, the mother, the sister, and everybody, they had a ham, and they would put the ham in the pan, and they would cut the ends of the ham out. And they said, well, so the daughter asked, Mom, why do we cut the ends of the ham off? She said, well, we've always done it that way. She said, well,
I had no idea why.
Yeah. We've always, well, they asked the grandmother, Grandma, why do we cut off the ends of the ham before we put it in the, well, we've always done it that way. So it took the great grandmother to say, oh my God, when we did this, we couldn't afford a bigger pan. And so I cut everything off the end so that it would fit. And it was just something they saw. And here we are, the fourth generation?
Yeah.
They're still cutting off things. And I say that why it's comical, but this is what we do in the area of trauma and domestic violence, family violence, and any other crazy behaviors that come along with that. They're learned behaviors. And so not only are there learned behaviors that become normalized, culturally speaking. Well, it was okay. Grandpa did it. Granddaddy did it. This is just how things are. And so now we feel like, well, that's okay because it becomes a common practice. So there's so many contributing factors when we begin to talk about it. You're like, what are we doing? How do we stop it? It's what we're doing right now, educating. And
if you can pinpoint a behavior that's, this is not right, this is something that needs to stop, then you can begin to address it. What got you interested in this line of work? Really?
What a question.
Because this has got to be, obviously it's a calling. It is. You're a faith-based woman. And but it's hard. This is hard stuff.
It's hard. And sometimes you have to just take a break and step back and say, okay, God, is it time for me to just move in another direction? And I will tell you, each time I would try to move in another direction, pull me right back.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but what got me into this, honestly, I have some family dynamics in the past, that we looked at growing up in a household. And while I was not in a domestic violence situation with another intimate partner, I saw it in my household. I saw it with my mom and my dad, and so I grew up and we normalized some things. So I come into the military, right? So I come into the military and I'm seeing things happening. I'm like, okay. And it's when I went into retirement and I began to work at the family advocacy program. And that is when I'm listening to wives, I'm listening to siblings, and they're talking about these things that are going on. And nobody knows where to go and who to talk to.
Yeah, how to get any help.
How to get out of it. And then the ones that do know, they're afraid because how do we move forward? And because the lack of resources. And you begin to look at the resources. We have one shelter. And we were talking about, and they do, we have two now with us. But in the beginning at that time, only one shelter in the city of Killeen. And we're out the number one largest military installation in the free world in the U.S. We have one shelter. Where do you go with that? And so then you begin to look at the other resources, because if you call the police on this, it's got to be physical violence because nobody acknowledges emotional.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and that certainly is the old sticks and stones. And,
right.
Words
exactly.
are extremely harmful.
Extremely harmful.
They are. That's not a true thing.
It's not. It's not. And I was like, you go back and you're learning so many things now.
Right.
Because it used to be we were looking, like I said, the sticks and stuff. But in the Bible, and I'm going to go a little on my faith here, it says faith comes by hearing and hearing the word of God. But all these other things come by hearing. Okay. Low self-esteem, worthlessness comes by hearing when somebody continues to tell you what you're not, who you're not, or that you're ugly or that you're fat. And you hear all these degrading terms and everything and colorful adjectives being thrown at you. What do you think is happening? Is that going to build your self-confidence? Is that going to build your self-esteem? No, it tears it down. And so that's the emotional and psychological aspect of it that we don't see, that's not on the piece of paper, that, if I go and get a few stitches, that doesn't heal. And so how did I get into that? Because I sat across from that desk and client after client, and I'm listening to this, and I was like, oh my God. Somebody's got to do something. And, and I always tell Lolita, you got the two angels, the left and the right.
Yeah.
Is it?
The little devil on one side.
And so, so what are you going to do about it? And it was like, on the other side, on the right side, well, you can do something about it. Yeah. And I begin to talk to other people and say, we got to do something. Mm-hmm. And that's when we got to teach them that this isn't right. And that's how we came up with Teach Them to Love. And that's how we started the ministry aspect. And initially, it was just advocacy. And,
right. Just helping. Anyway. Mm-hmm.
Just talking, saying, hey, listen, girl, you don't have to stay in this. Right. We can get this, we can get that done.
We can find you help.
We can find you help. Mm-hmm. But then it got to be to the point where we're finding help. And guess what? Where do you go after you get the help? Where do you go after you do the protective order? Where do you go?
Now, if you don't have a family member you can go.
Exactly. So what happens then? Mm-hmm. Or if you tell me, well, relocate to another state, and they're like, everything I know is here.
Right.
So why do I have to go outside the state? Why do I have to go outside the city? Mm-hmm. And so then at that point, so we started the services in 2014. It was in 2017 that we actually opened up the shelter. And I will tell you, we've been going full swing ever since. And you would like to say, well, you know what? We're barely open and we don't have a whole lot of clients. That would be a highlight. But the truth of the matter is, no, you have more than you can honestly serve, mm-hmm. And which brings us to why we're doing the Shades of Purple. When we get into this is our annual campaign. Mm-hmm. This is the one time that we raise money and we continue to do the services. And not only that, it's not about the annual campaign. It's about having the opportunity, those same individuals that have come through those doors, they get an opportunity to be celebrated. And some of the individuals never come through the doors, but they receive the outreach services. Or somebody says, you know what, I know a girl or a gal that this happened, and I think you ought to talk with her. And so you got people hitting me up in Messenger. I want to tell you my story. And we were like, how do we start telling the story? How do we do this? Yeah. And that's how it all got started.
Yeah, you're talking the Shades of Purple, which is a gala. It's an event.
It is.
October 23rd.
October 23rd,
2021. And how many years ago was it I came to Shades of Purple?
You did our second annual Shades of Purple, so that was 2 years ago.
It was 2 years ago.
Right.
Yes, and I was so honored to be a part of that event because, it's about domestic violence and horrible, really awful things that people go through.
Yes, ma'am.
But it was such a celebration. It was such a party. It was one of the most fun things I've been to, which sounds kind of weird in a way, but because we celebrated people who came out of really dire situations. And, we always think about women being victimized. But there were at least 2 men.
There were 2 males there, right?
Yeah, and one was, a preacher?
Yes.
As I recall?
Yes, Chaplain Benson. And, and he gave his story. And his story, it still haunts me to this day because he came out of the situation. And I like telling his story. And I like telling the story because quite often we have males that would never tell their story.
Oh, I'm sure. Well, even to come to you for help.
Exactly.
But women can certainly be the aggressor and the abuser.
Mm-hmm. And in his case, she was the abuser. She was the aggressor. She too had been abused, And so when she got with him, any little thing that he said, she had trust issues. And those trust issues began to magnify. She became paranoid. He's doing this, he's doing that. And, and he was like, she told him one night, I'm going to kill you. Yeah. And
if somebody says that, believe
it. Yeah, believe him. But he dismissed it until he got a phone call 2 nights later to say that his sister had been killed by her husband. Goodness. He said at that point, his whole world shifted. And the next time she told him that he said, no, I'll see you in a few minutes. And he left the house and he never went back in there.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he did leave. And so, but he had to, because he realized that this was serious, and it was very serious. And so, and like you said, when somebody tells you that that's what, believe them.
Yeah.
Because they mean that. Who says they're in their right mind? That not to somebody that you love, not to someone that you care about.
Yeah.
You know, you may be like, you know what? I'm really upset with you right about that.
Yeah.
But not that I'm going to kill you.
Oh, heavens no.
You know, that's a
Heavens,
strong
no.
statement. You're like, that's kind of final. You know?
Oh, yeah.
Like,
Well,
oh my
you've
God.
got a lot of stories, and we've got more to talk about because you've even written a book. We will come back with Lolita Gilmore right after this break.
Yay.
Hey, I'm April,
Hey, I'm Caroline, and this is Bloody Happy Hour.
your newest true crime comedy podcast.
So grab your favorite drink and join us every week for Thirsty Thursday.
We promise to tell you the bloodiest stories and give you a laugh in between. Go find us, follow us, and subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts. Cause guess what?
We about to be sipping on some murder.
This is Mandy and the F-Bomb, where we shed light on stories and invite you to find your place and purpose in the world of foster care. Through my involvement with families involved in foster care and being a foster mom myself, I've learned that it's the things that wreck us the most profoundly that can stitch us back together into the best, purpose-filled versions of ourselves. Tune in to Mandy and the F-Bomb. It's stories that invite you in to find your place and purpose in the world of foster care. You can find us anywhere you get podcasts or at roguemedianetwork.com. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a thing.
Looking for something a little more approachable and less polished about childbirth?
There's a lot of really good podcasts and YouTube channels, books, and articles on this topic. So what's the angle? My name is Micah Burgess, and I've been a birth doula for over 20 years. What's a birth doula? I'm basically a childbirth labor coach, but more on that later. I'm also a mom of 6. That's right, 6 kids. Now, before you ooh and ah because I just flashed the number 6, can I just say, you don't even know if I fed them today. I mean, Mike's my producer. People automatically assume I'm a great mom because I birthed 6 children.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, moving on.
It's a really good point, honestly, and I'd never thought about the fact that you didn't feed them today. That's great.
Right. Yeah. I have 6 kids. That's all you know. That's literally all you know.
I'd like to clarify that it's not great if you didn't feed them. Okay.
That's so true. That's so true. So as I was thinking about this trailer for the podcast, I decided to go ahead and listen to some of the examples of other trailers for different podcasts. Unfortunately, I do not have an amazing accent that will hypnotize you so that you don't actually care what comes out of my mouth.
Agreed.
Right? So this trailer needs to give you a good sense of what this podcast will be like. Okay, so let's talk about the title. Game day is referring to the actual day the mom is giving birth. I use this term often in my book. Hey, Mike, I wrote a book during quarantine.
What's the name of that book?
The Humor in Birth, Stories and Insights from a Doula. And we're going to use that as a guide for the podcast, interviewing different people and stories that are in the book. And so I'm excited about that. Now, when you hear game day, you might also be thinking like sports show, but this is not a sports show. It's about births, not balls. And this is a play on words, so you can make the balls be whatever you want. I'm just saying. So here's what I know about birth. It's amazing, monumental, hard, messy, traumatic, and life-changing. And these are the things you typically hear about. All the different options, the education preparation, maybe what went wrong or the nurse you didn't like. There's also bad experiences, trauma, and yes, loss. These are all things that need to be talked about and shared. What I want to highlight is an aspect of birth rarely talked about: the humor, enjoyment, the giggles, amusement, candor. I mean, these are unfiltered women, y'all, with some fabulous one-liners. So as my client Sherry is now pushing for hour number 2, she says, Howard, you're getting fixed. What about the hilarious things family members do during birth? My sister-in-law is focused and breathing through a very difficult contraction. And my brother, burrito breath, is all up in her grill.
Is that his God-given name?
Yeah, burrito breath. That's what we call him. Don't do that. People don't eat in labor and then breathe on your person. Don't do that. What about my embarrassing blunders, Mike? At the end of one of the births I attended, I was congratulating my client. Oh my goodness, Rebecca, you were so amazing. So proud of you. Congratulations. And she's like, thank you. My name is Cecilia.
Ooh.
Seriously? Like I just called you the wrong name 100 million times during your birth. Okay, I probably shouldn't get paid for that one, y'all. The lighthearted atmosphere can be positive and powerful. When the room is not heavy, it can remind the laboring mom that she's okay, she's normal, birth is normal, and this can strengthen her mentally. That's what I do. I help women during childbirth, help them manage contractions through breathing and different big bag of tricks that I got. Give them mental and emotional support so that they can have a positive birth experience. When we embrace these light-hearted moments, they become special memories. And the more we share the memories, the more positive the birth becomes. And that's what we're going to do on this podcast. We're going to share these light-hearted, positive moments and these stories and these amazing people that I get to work with in births. I'm going to share my own birth stories. We're going to have different people that we're interviewing, and I'm super excited about that. So join me using any of the podcast platforms or roguemedianetwork.com. Subscribe so you don't miss any episodes of Game Day, Birds Not Balls. You can also follow me
At My Doula Micah.
and check out my website, wacodoula.com.
That was really good, honestly.
Yeah?
You did a really good job.
Cool.
Yeah. Most people don't do it that well the first time through.
And we are back with Lolita Gilmore, who is the executive director and creator, founder of Teach Them to Love Outreach Ministry, and Shades of Purple Gala, which will be on October 23rd, 2021. You do this every year. It is a primary fundraiser for the work that you do, helping domestic violence survivors and those who find themselves in just perfectly dreadful situations.
Yes, exactly. So when we talk about the Shades of Purple, when you look at that, what is it? And someone asked the other day, where did you come up with the term
idea?
shades?
Shades of purple. We've heard of shades of gray and all that kind of stuff.
Right. And we
Not
said,
related to that.
Totally different. And so with Shades of Purple, because purple being the color that we utilize for domestic violence.
Oh, okay.
Okay, is also the color when something is deep and dark, when we start talking about what's going on in emotions. And they said, when we get to the darker emotions, it's black, purple in that area. So when you begin to talk about the shades of purple, you were like, what's your shade? Where are you in this journey? Where's your healing process?
Yeah, are you lilac?
Yeah.
Are you lavender?
Well, you're lavender, lilac. What's going on?
Yeah.
And so that's when we say the shades of purple, because you have some, like one young lady, she said, well, I really want to wear pink. I said, you want to wear pink? She said, yeah, that pinkish rose, fuchsia. I said, then wear that.
Yeah.
Because that's where you are right now. I'm not even in the purple family. I've just exceeded that. I've graduated. I'm doing some things. And so that's where the shades come in. What's your shade? Where's your healing process? Are you at a stuck point? Have we surpassed purple? Are we deep in the black area?
Yeah.
Where are we?
Indigo, really.
Yeah,
The deep,
exactly.
those deep colors.
Those deep colors.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I think about a bruise.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
As the shades of purple, and as it,
Exactly.
heals, and it even kind of gets green.
Right.
Well, I don't know. That's kind of what I thought of.
That's beautiful
because sadly, many of these victims have been physically assaulted. I mean, they have suffered those bruises and cuts and abrasions.
And they have.
Yeah.
And so when you look at the bruising, Look at the different shades, the color, the coloration, or the discoloration that comes along with that. And you're like, but we know when it begins to heal, when the healing process is taking place, because what's happening, it gets brighter and it comes back to the normal skin tone.
Then it's the normal color. Yeah.
And so that's when the shades of purple. And so when we got that, and there was so many shades of different women, you know,
And, as you say,
demographics
men.
and men,
Yeah,
you know,
men too.
and so and it is not. There's no prejudice in this, and not in this field, not in this dynamic, because it affects everybody.
There is, right.
You know, everyone is affected by
And
it.
every socioeconomic.
It doesn't matter, rich, poor, that does not matter. And so when you look at that, that's where the shades of purple comes in and says, you know what, we embrace everyone. You know, this is an opportunity to come in, and your story where others have made you to be embarrassed or ashamed of what has happened, we can celebrate this.
Yeah,
This
you do.
Yeah.
I mean, it truly is. I have to say, it's surprising when you think about the subject matter, as you know, and what folks have gone through. But that's what I love about this podcast, because I love talking to people who see a need, you know, and often it's the Lord that's telling them, you need to do something about that. And I mean, I can't imagine you when you were in the Army, you would imagine that you would be doing what you're doing now.
Right.
And that you would have the ministry that you have, you know, really. Yeah. And that's what's kind of fun about
it. Is.
This
journey, because, you know, so many says, you're in the military. Yeah, I went into the military, and it was
why did you do that?
Okay, so I was a little knucklehead. Really, I was a little knucklehead. And what was happening with that, I got into some trouble. So it was like, you know, I want to be like everybody else. And so, you know what, I just came in because I was serving God and country and this and that. No, I got in a little trouble. And so my dad, he's talking to him, and he was like, yay, kiddo, what are we going to do here? But this goes back when you have to understand the childhood trauma and that anger and what's going on, because I was just angry at the world. And so the military came about with, I got in some trouble, and he says, if you keep going along this path right here, it's not going to be very good. And I was like, but I was hanging out with my friends, doing some god awful stuff. And you were like, what teenagers do. And like, we were getting in trouble and all of that. And so when I got into trouble, big trouble, he said, you have a choice. And so what's that choice? You're going to find something to do. And he got me, and he took me down to the recruiting station.
Really?
And I was like, I'm not.
So did you have military folks in your family?
My dad's retired military.
So he
Army.
knew the value of that structure.
The entire family. My uncles retired from the Navy, everybody. And they were like, not this route. No, ma'am. We're going, what are we going to do? So I'm sitting there looking at them. I guess I have a choice. I go down here to the recruiting station. And I did. And in 30 days, I was at Fort Jackson boot camp. In boot camp. And so I always thank my pops for that. That I was like, you know what? This right here he was like, we're not going to do this. You are not going to do this. You're going to have to find a better way of handling this.
And so you made it a career.
It was
21
a career.
years, yeah.
It was 21 years.
Yeah.
21 years. And I would have done longer, but the deployments became rapid.
Yeah,
I did 3
think you were
tours.
in Iraq.
Yes, ma'am.
You did serve in Iraq?
I did.
What was that experience like?
Ooh, that was an experience. It was scary, but it was very fruitful at the same time. And I say that because you never know how much courage or stamina or resilience is within until you're faced with it all. You know, and so your thing becomes that, you know what, I'm going to get back home. And if I'm going to get back home, I'm going to have to get my head in the game. And I'm going to have to realize that my faith right about now is going to have to get me through this and get me out of this. Yeah. And so it was scary, but it was a time that was needed for our country and where we were and what we were doing. Sure, yeah. And it served its purpose. Mm-hmm. You know, I lost a nephew, over there, had to escort him back home. And that was in July 2007. So, all these things are fairly recent. Mm-hmm. And you're like, but we served God and country. Yeah. And now when we come home after retirement, now you go serve the community. And you do that passion, those things that you never knew that you. Why do I feel this way? Why do I want to talk to individuals about substance abuse and understanding? Because in growing up, substance abuse was a huge reason a lot of the domestic violence would take place in the child abuse
all
in the home.
it's all interlocked.
all
It all.
interlocked.
Now
Yes,
you've
ma'am.
written a book, and this was in 2016, A Simple
Mm-hmm.
Leaf. Tell me about your book.
Okay. So A Simple Leaf talks about myself and my 4 siblings. And we're talking about, and the main character in that book is Janky. And Janky because what my grandmother used to call me, Jinx. And she used to say that to me because no matter when she would go play bingo or cards or whatever, if I was there, she said, you jinx me every time.
Oh,
So that was
really?
kind of like my nickname. But
Wow.
anyway,
Now
long
that
story
doesn't
short, I was like, oh, maybe
that
she
doesn't help your self-esteem,
yeah,
Annie.
right. You jinx. And what she started saying was like, well, maybe I shouldn't be coming. But that was just she and I. That was our little conversations we would have. But after writing that book, it tells about giving you a bird's eye view of what child abuse really looks like through the eyes of the child. Yeah. And while the family is thinking, well, it's just mom and dad having this conversation or this heated argument. But in the midst of that heated argument, you hear some colorful adjectives and some situations that you're like, oh, they're talking about us. And so all of that comes into play. And we also understand what mental health happens in the family unit and how that contributes largely to when we start talking about family violence. Because what we're looking at and we're thinking, well, that's just a substance abuse issue or that person is just hard to get along with. No, that person was really seriously dealing with mental illness. And so that's what the book begins to color all of that and outline and expound on it as to say, this is not black and white. You know, this is there's some areas to all of it. And if we don't take the time to get an understanding of where it developed from and where it started, then we're never going to fix it. And so what happened with my mom and her mental health issues. And so, and a lot of people think, well, was it the dad that was abusive? No, it was the mother. But it was because of mental health.
Right.
And so, and the things that was happening in that, and after going through all of that, then now the dad has to figure out, where do we go from here? What do we do from here? So that's what the book is really all about. It paints a really colorful picture of what child abuse looks like, family violence looks like through the eyes of the children.
And that's available on Amazon.
That is available.
A Simple Leaf. Your Shades of Purple gala. Just a few days from when this podcast drops, but it's not too late. You have a website folks could go to get more information.
We have a website. You can go to t3loutreach.org to our website and hit the donation button, or you can go on PayPal, t3l/me, and that you can get your tickets there, or you can go to Facebook, to our Facebook page, Teach Them to Love Outreach, and you'll see right there, because we've created an event. So go on Facebook and look for the event, and you can even get your tickets there. Or you can call me 254-781-9900, and I will drop them off to you. So there's so many ways that we can do this, because we always get huge community support, and I love that. I love that because and the last one you have the mayor of Nolanville, you have the mayor of Colleen.
Yeah, it was
they come out because
beautifully attended. Yeah,
it is, and it's because everybody understands. The more awareness and the more we talk about it, we want to normalize the healing piece of it. That's what we want to normalize.
Right. Oh, yeah. Not the abuse.
Not the abuse.
Yeah.
So the more we talk about it, the more we celebrate the healing aspect of it. That's our hope. The more individuals will come along and say, you know what? You don't have to be ashamed to talk about that.
Yeah.
You know? You know.
Well,
so,
it is a delight always to have Lolita. I like to end these visits, though, with a questionnaire. It's similar to the one the late, great James Lipton used on Inside the Actor's Studio, and it's kind of my little take on it.
Okay.
What is your favorite word?
What's my favorite word? My favorite word is honestly love.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. What's your least favorite word?
My least favorite word is bitter. It really is.
Yeah, bitterness can really come out of all that. Okay, so what turns you on creatively, emotionally, or spiritually?
I've always been a sucker for the underdog.
Yeah.
You know, if I see somebody homeless or without, that just pulls on my heartstrings. And I don't want to see anybody suffering, you know? So that's it for me. And I will, oh my God, I've had so many individuals when we were living on the East Coast up in Philly, I would go on the street and I'm talking, they'd be like, you just can't go up and talk to, this person. I said, yeah, you can. Yeah, you can. What are you going to do? Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
So I just don't like to see individuals suffering. Yeah.
Then what turns you off creatively or spiritually or emotionally?
What turns me off is the judgmental aspects that we see, and I want to put this in a very nice way, a healthy way. When we minimize what individuals are going through, we minimize their hurt, we minimize their problems, we minimize their issues, and we like everybody is going. It's not a one shoe or one size fits all for everyone. Everyone should be addressed at where their level of healing, their level of hurt. And you see that quite a bit where we minimize so much. We don't listen. And I think if we would listen to people more, we'll get a good understanding of what we're dealing with, even with our children. You have so many, I've had my they're out of the house now. And they were like, you know what? The one thing we love is that you would always stop and say, when they would act out, like, hold on, what is really going on here?
Right. Yeah, because there's a motivation for what's happening here. What sound do you love the most?
Okay, I'm a little goofy, but the ocean. If you can sit there and I have this app and I can literally go to sleep with listening to I'm sitting listening
you're
to
not the
ocean.
first one of my guests who've said the ocean waves, certainly.
Yeah. I love the ocean waves. I really do. And it's soothing. And after what I deal with all day, that's my way of just
you
laying
have
it down
to
at
have
night.
that release.
Yeah.
You do. You absolutely do. Well, then what is your least favorite sound?
Because I'm a crazy driver when somebody not honking that horn.
Okay. All right.
And so that's my least. Don't blow at me. I'm sorry.
Traffic chaos. All right. What other profession would you have liked to try?
Honestly, the judicial system.
Really?
And law. And I because of dealing with everything that we're dealing with now, I honestly believe had I had that background, some of the things that we've had to encounter and some of the obstacles that we've encountered along the way, we would have known how to go around that, and true that we have individuals to help us with that now. But that is one area that I was like, I don't have any regrets, but if there were one, that would be it, that I didn't really pursue and go into that field.
Well, then what profession do you know you would not want to do?
Let me see. Law enforcement. Law enforcement. Hats off to you guys, but no.
Yeah, we need them for sure. But
do.
It's a calling.
It is. It's a calling.
Well.
It
I think
is.
the Waco Police Chief, Cheryl Victorian, she was called to that. She's got a great story.
No, I
about
love
that,
them, but I just wouldn't.
Right. All right. Finally,
Yes,
what
ma'am.
do you want to hear God say when you arrive at those pearly gates?
Well done, girl. That's what I want to hear him say, well done. And I live my life with no regrets. If I see it, I'm going after it. And as long as I know I'm being led, I feel him nudging on the shoulder. And so, so well done. Well done. That's what I want to hear.
Well done. I will say from my aspect here, as we thank Lolita Gilmore for coming to be with us. And again, Shades of Purple Gala, you can find that on Facebook. And you have a website as well, Teach Them to Love.
Right.
Outreach Ministries, you can find it easily. And
you can just Google it. It comes right up, or go to t3loutreach.org. Go to Facebook, Teach Them to Love. And like I said, me, Lolita, hit me up on Messenger or just call me.
Yeah, you got help for folks, and that's just amazing. And I thank you for your service.
Oh, thank you. I love you.
I love you too. We're just having a love fest.
Yes.
Love you as well. Thanks for watching.
This is Central Texas Living with Ann Harder.